In the 1600s, the island at the mouth of the Hudson River was wild, green, and full of promise. It did not look like modern New York City. There were no tall buildings, no busy streets, and no bright lights. Instead, there were forests, rivers, and small Native American trading paths. The island felt like the edge of the known world, a true frontier. At first, it was only a small Dutch trading post called New Amsterdam. The settlement was simple and rough. Wooden houses stood along muddy lanes. Small farms were carved out of thick forests. At the southern tip of the island stood a strong little fort that protected the harbor. Life was hard, but the location was perfect for trade. Ships could easily sail in and out, carrying goods between Europe and the New World. Everything began when the English explorer Henry Hudson sailed into the river in 1609. He was searching for a new route to Asia, but instead found a beautiful and wide river. That river would later be named the Hudson River in his honor. When Hudson and his crew stepped onto the shore, they found land already alive with Native American communities, especially the Lenape people. Trade routes already existed, and the land was not empty. It was part of a living world. Hudson's arrival seemed small at the time, but it changed history. Soon, Dutch merchants became interested in the region. They saw opportunity in the fur trade, especially beaver pelts, which were valuable in Europe. In 1626, Dutch officials arranged a deal with local Native Americans to secure Manhattan. Later stories say it was bought for goods worth 24 guilders. However, both sides likely understood the agreement very differently. The Dutch believed they had purchased the land permanently. The Lenape may have believed they were simply allowing shared use. This misunderstanding would shape the future of the island. After gaining control, the Dutch began building quickly. Creating a settlement was not easy work. Settlers had to cut down tall trees with hand axes. They dragged heavy logs through mud to build homes, fences, warehouses, and defensive walls. Everything required physical strength and patience. Winters were cold, supplies were limited, life demanded constant effort. Still, the town slowly grew. Ships arrived more often, merchants traded furs, timber, and other goods. Farmers planted crops, craftsmen opened small workshops. Different languages could be heard in the streets: Dutch, French, African languages, and Native American dialects. Even in its early days, New Amsterdam was already becoming a diverse place. By the mid-1600s, the settlement had become important enough to attract attention from other European powers. The English wanted control of the valuable harbor. In 1664, English ships appeared offshore. The Dutch governor, Peter Stuyvesant, wanted to fight, but many settlers did not. They feared destruction and loss. Without a battle, the colony surrendered peacefully to the English. With that surrender, New Amsterdam received a new name, New York, named after the Duke of York. Dutch rule ended and English authority began. The language of government changed, laws changed, but many Dutch families stayed, and their influence remained part of the city's identity. By the end of the 1600s, New York was still small, but it was growing quickly. It had become a crossroads, a meeting place of cultures, ambitions, and empires. Wooden houses and dirt roads still defined the town, yet the harbor was busy with ships from across the Atlantic. The settlement stood restless, full of energy, on the edge of a vast continent. No one at that time could imagine that this small, muddy colony would one day become one of the greatest cities in the world. But in the 1600s, the foundation was already being built, step by step, log by log, ship by ship. The air of early New Amsterdam was thick with wood smoke and sweat. The sharp crack of splitting timber echoed through the trees as settlers slowly carved a town out of the wilderness. Nothing came easily. Every beam had to be cut by hand. Every plank had to be shaped and carried. Each day meant hard labor from sunrise to sunset. The colony grew one board, one nail,
one exhausting day at a time. In 1626, Fort Amsterdam rose at the southern tip of Manhattan. It was not a grand stone castle, but a rough defensive fort made of timber and packed earth. Wooden walls formed a protective palisade. From its ramparts, Dutch soldiers looked out over the harbor, watching ships arrive and keeping an eye on the shifting tides. Nearby stood the warehouses of the Dutch West India Company, filled with valuable furs and trade goods. The fort was more than protection, it was a message. It showed that the Dutch intended to stay. Life, however, was not peaceful. Tensions between Dutch settlers and native nations led to years of violence. Farms were burned, lives were lost. Fear spread through the small community. In 1644, Dutch leaders and native representatives met to create fragile treaties. Around council fires and rough wooden tables, they exchanged wampum and promises. These agreements did not create deep trust. Instead, they brought a tired kind of peace, one born more from exhaustion than forgiveness. Still, it allowed the colony time to recover and rebuild. In 1655, another dark chapter grew within the settlement. Enslaved Africans were brought to New Amsterdam in increasing numbers. They were forced into labor by the Dutch West India Company. They worked on docks, built roads, cleared land, and served in homes. Their labor became deeply tied to the colony's economy. Under strict rules and harsh conditions, they had little freedom. This marked a turning point as slavery became a permanent and painful part of the city's foundation.
Inside a typical New Amsterdam home in the mid-1600s, life was simple and crowded. Most families lived in a single main room. A brick hearth provided warmth and a place to cook. Smoke from the fire drifted upward, sometimes escaping through small chimneys, sometimes lingering in the air. Light entered through small leaded glass windows. Furniture was plain and handmade. Rough wooden tables stood in the center of the room. Wool blankets lay folded on simple beds. Pewter dishes rested neatly on shelves. There was little decoration, only what was necessary for daily life. Mornings began early. The smell of porridge filled the air. Wooden stools scraped across the floor. Children helped grind grain or fetch water from nearby wells. Adults worked constantly, mending fishing nets, chopping firewood, salting meat to prepare for winter. Every season required planning and effort. The air carried many smells: wood smoke from the hearth, drying herbs hanging from beams, salted fish, damp river winds slipping through cracks in the walls. Winters were cold, summers could be humid and heavy. Evenings were quieter but still busy. Candles burned low as families gathered together. Stories were told, prayers were whispered, tools were prepared for the next day's work. Life was not luxurious, but it was shared. The community depended on cooperation and discipline. Every task mattered: cooking, sewing, sweeping floors, tending small gardens, caring for livestock. Survival required teamwork. The colony was still fragile, still uncertain, yet with each passing year, it grew stronger. New Amsterdam in the 1600s was not yet the mighty New York City we know today. It was rough, smoky, hard-working, and diverse. It was a place of ambition and struggle, of opportunity and injustice. And slowly, through effort and endurance, it laid the foundation for the powerful city that would rise in the centuries to come. Life in New Amsterdam had always followed a steady rhythm: work, trade, survival. The colony was growing, but it was still fragile. Then, in 1664, everything changed. English warships slowly sailed into the harbor. Their cannons were aimed directly at the fort that still carried the Dutch lion on its flag. The sight alone was enough to create fear. The colony was divided and its defenses were weak. Governor Peter Stuyvesant wanted to resist, but many colonists did not. They feared destruction and chaos more than they feared a change in rulers.
Without a single shot being fired, New Amsterdam surrendered. It was a quiet but powerful moment. The city passed peacefully into English hands and was given a new name, New York, in honor of the Duke of York. Its future shifted in an instant. In 1667, the Treaty of Breda officially confirmed what had already happened. The Dutch gave up New Netherland to England. In return, they gained control of Suriname in South America. With that treaty, Dutch hopes of reclaiming the colony seemed to end. New York was now firmly part of the English Empire. Its laws, government, and loyalties were reshaped under English rule. But history was not finished yet. In 1673, during another war between England and the Dutch Republic, Dutch ships suddenly returned. They captured the city and renamed it New Orange. For a brief year, Dutch flags flew again over the harbor. Old names and old authority returned, almost as if the past had come back to life. Yet diplomacy once again moved faster than war. Another treaty in 1674 returned the colony to England permanently. The name New York was restored. The moment of Dutch revival faded quickly, a short flicker before the English future settled firmly in place. By 1679, the city was clearly changing. The old Dutch stadhouse still stood, now serving English officials. Merchants, magistrates, and clerks filled its small rooms. Disputes were settled. Trade agreements were recorded. Taxes were counted. Though the government had changed, many Dutch influences remained part of daily life. The building itself stood as a reminder of the city's origins. Around 1680, New York was expanding quickly. The population had grown to more than 4,000 people, a large number for that time. New brick houses began replacing older wooden ones. Streets became busier. The port became a key part of Atlantic trade, connecting the colony to England, the Caribbean, Africa, and beyond. The great docks stretched out into the East River, serving as the busiest gateway of the colony. Ships arrived carrying goods like sugar, rum, textiles, and tools. Others departed loaded with furs, timber, and grain. Merchants negotiated loudly. Sailors hauled ropes and barrels. Laborers worked long hours under the sun. At the same time, the enslaved population grew sharply. Enslaved Africans became a major part of the colony's workforce. They built roads, worked on docks, constructed buildings, and labored in households. Their forced labor supported the city's rapid growth, even though they were denied freedom and rights. Slavery became deeply embedded in New York's early economy. By the end of the 1600s, New York was no longer a small frontier post. It had survived conflict, changed empires, and grown into a busy and diverse port city. Dutch tradition still lingered in names and customs, but English power now shaped its laws and identity. The once fragile settlement at the edge of the continent was becoming something stronger, a permanent city of trade, ambition, and empire.